On the 31st of August, 1997, a 15-year-old boy was woken at Balmoral Castle and told his mother was dead. She had been chased into a tunnel in Paris by men on motorcycles, men who earned up to £500,000 for a single photograph of her face. That boy is now the heir to the British throne. And he has spent the last 3 decades answering the question that night, forced upon him. How do you keep the people you love safe in a world that will pay a fortune to watch them suffer? His answer is not a policy. It is not a statement. It is a series of buildings, each one more hidden than the last, surrounded by fences, cameras, no-fly zones, and laws that make it a crime to simply walk too close. Chapter 1: The Night That Rewired a Dynasty. A photographer named Mario Brenna once earned $5 million from a single image of Diana embracing a man on a yacht. Let that number settle. $5 million. Not for an act of journalism. Not for exposing corruption or documenting war. For a picture of a woman kissing someone on holiday. That was the economy Diana Spencer lived inside. An economy where her face was the most valuable commodity on earth, where a clear shot of her eyes could pay for a house, and where the men who hunted her operated with the impunity of professionals who knew exactly what their product was worth. The numbers behind that economy deserve their own accounting. In the mid-1990s, a single clear photograph of Diana could fetch between £100,000 and £500,000 from a British tabloid. In international syndication, could triple that figure. The top paparazzi agencies in London employed between 30 and 50 photographers full-time, each earning upwards of £200,000 a year. The global market for celebrity images was estimated at $3 billion annually, and Diana accounted for a staggering share of that total. She was not merely a subject, she was an industry. Entire businesses existed solely to capture and sell her face. By the summer of 1997, the pursuit had become industrial. Paparazzi agencies in London, Paris, and Rome employed networks of informants. Hotel doormen, airline staff, restaurant managers. Anyone who could confirm Diana's location earned a finder's fee, typically between £500 and £5,000. The photographers themselves worked in teams, in leapfrogging ahead of her car, blocking intersections, surrounding her on foot in numbers that made escape impossible. They had names for the tactics: the pincer, the rolling block, the box. These were not metaphors. They were maneuvers rehearsed and refined across a decade of pursuit. Diana understood what she was inside. In her famous Panorama interview 2 years earlier, she had described life as the most photographed woman in the world with a clarity that still cuts. She spoke of bulimia, self-harm, and the particular torture of being watched at your lowest. She described how photographers would spit at her outside school gates, hoping to provoke a reaction that could be captured on film. She recalled being followed to the gym, to the shops, to her therapist's office. There was no corner of her life that was not for sale. She also understood the paradox. The cameras that tormented her were the same cameras that gave her power. Without them, she was a divorced mother of 2 living in a wing of Kensington Palace. With them, she could redirect the gaze of the entire planet toward landmine fields in Angola and AIDS wards in London. She needed the beast needed her, and neither could agree on the terms. On that final night in Paris, the terms collapsed. Diana and Dodi Fayed left the Ritz Hotel through a rear exit shortly after midnight. Their driver, Henry Paul, had been drinking. He had also, it would later emerge, been traveling at roughly twice the speed limit through the Alma Tunnel. Behind them, a swarm of photographers on motorcycles. The exact sequence of what happened next has been reconstructed thousands of times in inquests, documentaries, and conspiracy theories. What matters here is simpler. The car hit a pillar. Diana was still alive when the first photographer reached the wreckage. He did not call for help. He took pictures. She was 36 years old. At Balmoral, 500 miles north, 2 boys were asleep. Prince William was 15. Prince Harry was 12. Their father, Prince Charles, received the call and made the decision to wait until morning to wake them. The reasoning was practical. Diana was injured but alive, and there was nothing the boys could do. Then a second call came, and Charles walked to their rooms. What happened in those rooms has never been described in full by either brother. Harry, decades later, would write that the moment felt unreal, as though someone had told him a fact about a stranger. William has said almost nothing. That silence is not emptiness. It is the sound of a wound so deep that language cannot reach it. In the days that followed, William walked behind his mother's coffin through streets lined with millions of mourners. He was 15. His head was bowed. His fists were clenched. Cameras clicked from every direction. 2.5 billion people watched the funeral on television, making it one of the most viewed broadcasts in human history. Along the route, mourners threw flowers onto the road. Some screamed, some fainted. The sound of collective grief was so loud that the boys could hear it through the walls of their car before they stepped out to walk. The images from that morning became some of the most widely reproduced photographs in British history. William, in his dark suit, staring at the ground. Harry, smaller, walking slightly behind, their father on one side, their grandfather, Prince Philip, on the other. A card on the coffin reading simply, "Mummy." They were taken, of course, without the boys' consent. No one asked whether a 15-year-old wanted his worst moment broadcast to the planet. The question was not considered relevant. Here is what the night of August 31st taught William, in the language of a child forced to understand adult horror. The people with cameras killed my mother. The people with cameras are now photographing my grief, and no one with the power to stop them is choosing to do so. Every house he has lived in since has been an answer to that lesson. Chapter 2: The Deal That Bought a Boyhood. After Diana's coffin left Westminster Abbey, the palace brokered a secret agreement that would reshape William's next decade. The arrangement was never written into law. It carried no legal weight, but it held, with remarkable discipline, for nearly 10 years. In the weeks after Diana's funeral, senior officials at Buckingham Palace and St. James's Palace reached an informal understanding with the editors of Britain's major newspapers and wire services. The terms were plain: leave the boys alone, no photographs of William or Harry at school, no long lens surveillance of their weekends, no doorstepping, no pursuit, no publication of images taken without their knowledge. In exchange, the palace would provide carefully managed access at agreed intervals. A photo call on the ski slopes each winter. A posed portrait at the start of each school year. A controlled glimpse, in just enough to satisfy public curiosity without feeding the machine. It worked. William's years at Eton, from 1995 to 2000, were remarkably undisturbed. He played football on the school fields without a telephoto lens recording every stumble. He walked through the streets of Windsor without a motorcade. He was, in the narrow corridors of that ancient school, something close to ordinary. He made friends who knew him as Wills. He joined the school's water polo team. He had his heart broken by a girl whose name never appeared in print. For the first time since his mother's death, the apparatus of surveillance had been switched off, and a teenage boy was allowed to grow in something resembling peace. The pact was not without its tensions. Several times, freelance photographers tested the boundaries, snapping William on the street or in a shop window. Each time, the palace contacted the Press Complaints Commission and the offending outlet directly. The message was delivered with the calm authority of an institution that had just buried its most famous member at the age of 36. Honor the agreement, or face the consequences of a public that will never forgive you for tormenting her son. The pact extended into his time at the University of St. Andrews, where he arrived in 2001 under a fresh agreement negotiated with the Scottish press. The terms were even more explicit. No photographs on campus, no reporters posing as students, no publication of his coursework, his friendships, or his romantic life. When the occasional freelancer tested the boundaries, the palace response was swift and furious. Complaints were filed. Editors were called. The message was clear. This boy is off limits. It was at St. Andrews that William met Catherine Middleton. Their relationship developed in the shelter of that agreement, protected from the lens culture that had devoured his mother. They shared a flat in their second year. They walked to lectures together. They were spotted in pubs, at parties, at the local supermarket. And for the most part, no one published a word. Catherine, a middle-class girl from Berkshire with no title and no public profile, was allowed to fall in love with the future king in something approaching privacy. It was a privilege she may not have fully understood at the time. It was a privilege that would be violently revoked. This was the illusion that shaped William's young adulthood. The idea that privacy was possible, that if you behaved reasonably, and the press behaved reasonably, a line could be drawn between the public prince and the private man. It was, in retrospect, a greenhouse. The walls were invisible and temporary, but while they held, life inside them felt real. William graduated in 2005. He entered the military. He trained as a helicopter pilot, and through it all, the agreement held, growing thinner with each passing year, stretched by the growing public fascination with the handsome young prince and the woman who was clearly going to become his wife. The greenhouse shattered on Catherine's 25th birthday in January 2007. As she left her flat in Chelsea to go to work, she walked into a wall of cameras. 40 photographers, maybe more, pressed against her on the pavement, shooting continuously as she tried to reach her car. The images went around the world within hours. Catherine was not yet a member of the royal family. She had no protection officers. She had no car with blacked-out windows. She was a 25-year-old woman trying to get to work, and she was being hunted on a public street by men whose livelihood depended on her face. This was the moment William understood that the deal had an expiration date, that protection purchased through goodwill could be revoked at any time, and that the woman he loved was now inside the same machine that had killed his mother. The parallels were not lost on him. They were not lost on anyone. Within weeks, they had briefly separated. The reasons were complex, but the pressure of exposure was among them. When they reunited later that year, something had changed in William. He was no longer a young man who believed in agreements. He was becoming the man who would spend the next 2 decades building walls. Chapter 3. a kingdom built on 20 rooms. Apartment 1A at Kensington Palace is not an apartment at all, but a 4-story mansion disguised by a modest name. The naming convention is a relic of a time when Kensington Palace was carved into grace and favor residences for minor royals and senior courtiers. The word apartment suggests something compact, something with a buzzer and a shared hallway. Apartment 1A has 20 rooms spread across 4 floors, its own private garden, and a service entrance large enough for a removal lorry. It was the London home of Princess Margaret until her death in 2002. And it sat largely empty for a decade before William and Catherine moved in, following their wedding in 2011. The renovation was significant. £4.5 million of public money flowed into the project over 2 years, funded through the sovereign grant. New heating systems, rewired electrics, asbestos removal from every floor, a new roof. The plumbing was entirely replaced. The building's structural timber, some of it dating to the 17th century, was reinforced. New security systems were installed throughout, including blast-resistant windows on the ground floor and a reinforced safe room whose location has never been publicly disclosed. The costs were published, as they are required to be, and the tabloids dutifully reported each figure with varying degrees of outrage. What the figures did not capture was the nature of the transformation happening inside. William and Catherine were building something the palace had rarely seen: a family home, not a residence with a domestic wing staffed by 30, not a house where children were summoned to a drawing room for 20 minutes before bed. A home where the kitchen was the center of gravity, where bath time happened at 6:30 and bedtime stories were read by parents, not nannies. They chose warm paint colors, soft furnishings, and a layout that encouraged the family to spend time in the same room rather than retreating to separate wings. When the Queen visited and saw the new kitchen, she reportedly expressed bewilderment. Why would anyone want to spend time in a kitchen? The question was sincere. Elizabeth II had never cooked a meal in her life. She had never loaded a dishwasher, boiled an egg, or opened her own refrigerator. The generational divide contained in that single exchange reveals more about William's project than any architectural plan. He was not building a royal residence. He was building a home in which his children would know what a kitchen smelled like at dinner time. 800 feet of new hedging went in around the apartment's garden perimeter. This was not decorative planting. It was a living wall designed to block sightlines from the 50 or so neighboring residences within Kensington Palace's grounds and from the public pathways that wind through Kensington Gardens just beyond. The hedges were fast-growing laurel, chosen for density rather than beauty. They would reach 8 feet within 3 years. Behind them, William's children could play in a garden without appearing in a telephoto lens. The planting was supervised by the royal parks and the palace's own grounds team, who understood exactly what was being asked of them. This was not horticulture, it was fortification. Green, living, and constantly growing, but fortification all the same. The family lived at Kensington for roughly 6 years as their primary London base. During this time, William and Catherine hosted modest dinners, walked George and Charlotte to a local nursery, and attempted something resembling urban normality within the palace walls. They were spotted at local restaurants. They were seen in Kensington Gardens pushing a pram. They attended school events alongside other parents who were politely instructed not to take photographs. The experiment in visible domesticity had its charm. It also had its limits. The peak of this openness came in April 2016, when the Obamas visited London and stopped by the apartment. A 2-year-old Prince George greeted the President of the United States in his dressing gown and a personalized bathrobe, riding a rocking horse that the Obamas had gifted at his birth. The photographs were released by the palace. They were warm, funny, and entirely controlled. Michelle Obama later described the scene as one of the most delightful moments of their international travels. George, oblivious to protocol, had simply been a toddler meeting visitors to his home. That image, a toddler in pajamas meeting the most powerful man on earth, represented the high watermark of William's experiment in visible domesticity. It was charming precisely because it looked spontaneous. It was published precisely because it was not. Every frame had been approved. Every angle had been checked. The illusion of openness was itself a form of control. And control, William had learned, was the only form of safety available to him. But control inside the apartment could not govern what happened beyond the hedges. And beyond the hedges, in the fields of Norfolk, in the lanes around a country house called Anmer Hall, men with cameras were already digging in. The walls William had built in London were about to be tested by a threat that no hedge, no matter how dense, could stop. Chapter 4. The lenses in the hedgerow. In the fields around Anmer Hall, men with telephoto lenses hid in ditches and sent children to lure a toddler prince into the open. That sentence deserves to be read twice, not because it is dramatic, but because it is true. In the years following Prince George's birth in July 2013, the security detail at Anmer Hall, William and Catherine's country home on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, documented a pattern of intrusion so aggressive that it reads like the operational log of a surveillance campaign. Anmer Hall sits on the 20,000-acre Sandringham estate, a private royal holding in the flat, open countryside of North Norfolk. The house itself is a 10-bedroom Georgian manor, gifted to William and Catherine by the Queen as a wedding present. Its appeal was its remoteness. 2 hours from London, surrounded by farmland. No public footpaths running past the front door. In theory, it was the perfect retreat. In practice, it was a target. The birth of George, followed by Charlotte in 2015 and Louis in 2018, made the Wales children among the most commercially valuable photographic subjects on the planet. A clear, unauthorized image of George playing in a park could fetch 6 figures from international outlets. A shot of all 3 children together in a candid domestic moment was worth considerably more. And Anmer Hall, for all its rural isolation, was surrounded by fields, lanes, and public rights-of-way that offered dozens of potential sightlines. The paparazzi adapted. They rented farmland adjacent to the estate and set up hides in the hedgerows, the same technique used by wildlife photographers, except the wildlife was a 3-year-old boy. They used cars with darkened windows parked on country lanes with clear views of the driveway. They hired local people to walk dogs along the perimeter and note the family's movements. And in the most disturbing documented tactic, they positioned children at a playground near the estate, hoping that George, accompanied by his nanny, would approach and be drawn into an interaction that could be photographed. Think about that calculus for a moment. An adult, motivated by the value of a photograph, placed a child in a public space as bait to attract another child, so that a camera hidden nearby could capture the moment. This is not journalism. This is not even the gray area of public interest photography. This is the deployment of a minor as an instrument of surveillance against another minor. And it happened not in the 1990s, not in the lawless era before Diana's death prompted reform. It happened after the Leveson inquiry, after the phone hacking trials, after the closure of the News of the World, after every promise the British media industry made about learning from the past, after every editor solemnly declared that the era of invasive celebrity pursuit was over. The tactics had not changed. They had merely moved further from London. William's response was systematic and escalating. The driveway at Anmer Hall was rerouted so that arriving cars were no longer visible from the nearest lane. Hedgerows along the property's boundaries were reinforced and raised to a height of 12 feet in some sections. Security cameras were installed at intervals along the estate's perimeter, linked to a monitoring station staffed around the clock. A dedicated police presence was established, funded by the Metropolitan Police's Royalty and Specialist Protection Command, with officers patrolling the surrounding lanes in unmarked vehicles. Motion sensors were buried in the fields adjoining the property, and the Queen's land agents began purchasing or leasing adjacent parcels of farmland, eliminating the closest potential surveillance positions one by one. But the incident that may have hardened William's resolve more than any other occurred not in Norfolk, but in the south of France. In September 2012, while William and Catherine were staying at a private chateau in Provence, a photographer with an extremely powerful telephoto lens captured images of Catherine sunbathing, topless, on a private terrace. The images were published by a French magazine. The distance from which they were taken was later estimated at over half a mile. The royal household responded with lawsuits in 3 countries. Catherine and William issued a personal statement, calling the publication a grotesque invasion of privacy, reminiscent of the worst excesses of the press during Diana's life. The parallels were unmistakable and clearly deliberate in their language. A woman from the family, on private property, photographed without consent, her body turned into a commodity. The French courts eventually awarded damages, but the amount was symbolic, roughly 50,000 euros. The magazine that published the images had likely earned many times that from increased sales. For William, the message was final. Distance alone was not enough. Hedgerows were not enough. Rural isolation was not enough. If a camera with the right lens could reach his wife from half a mile away, then the perimeter of safety had to be measured not in meters, but in acres, and it would need the force of law behind it. The arms race was about to escalate. Chapter 5. The billion-pound shield. Every year, £23 million flows from 135,000 acres of English countryside into the private accounts of the Prince of Wales. This is the Duchy of Cornwall. Established in 1337 by Edward III for his son, the Black Prince, it is one of the oldest and largest landed estates in England. It stretches across 23 counties, from the tin mines of Cornwall to the farmland of Herefordshire, to prime commercial property in Kennington, South London. It owns the Oval Cricket Ground. It owns Dartmoor Prison. It owns the bed of the River Tamar and the rights to any unclaimed estate in the entire county of Cornwall. Its total value exceeds £1 billion. And since September 2022, when Charles ascended to the throne and William became Prince of Wales, every penny of its surplus income has belonged to William. £23 million a year. Let that figure sit alongside another. The average annual household income in the United Kingdom is roughly £31,000. William's duchy income alone is equivalent to the combined earnings of more than 700 British families. And unlike the sovereign grant, which funds the monarchy's official operations and is subject to parliamentary oversight, the duchy income is private. and William pays income tax on it voluntarily, a practice established by Charles in 1993. But the spending itself answers to no audit that the public will ever see. William can direct it towards security upgrades, property renovations, the purchase of adjoining land to extend a buffer zone, or any other purpose he chooses. It is, in practical terms, a private fortune generated by public land. But the duchy is only one column in the ledger. Diana's estate, divided equally between her two sons after her death, provided William with approximately £6,800,000 in 1997. Invested conservatively over the subsequent decades, that inheritance is now estimated to be worth £10 million or more. The Queen Mother, who died in 2002, left the bulk of her estate in a trust for her great-grandchildren. The exact amount has never been disclosed, but estimates range from £14 million to £20 million, with William among the primary beneficiaries. Then there is the most opaque number of all, royal security. The Metropolitan Police's Royalty and Specialist Protection Command provides round-the-clock personal protection to senior members of the royal family. The cost is classified. The government has consistently refused to disclose the total, citing national security. When pressed in Parliament, ministers have described the expenditure as a matter of operational security that cannot be itemized without compromising the very protection it funds. Independent estimates from security analysts and parliamentary researchers place the annual bill for all royal protection at somewhere between £100 million and £150 million. Some estimates go higher. William and his family, as the heir's household, are understood to receive a significant share of this budget. Armed officers accompany the family at all times. Counter-surveillance teams sweep their residences before each arrival. Bomb detection dogs inspect vehicles and deliveries. Cybersecurity specialists monitor the family's communications and digital footprint. Perimeter monitoring systems require maintenance, upgrades, and around-the-clock staffing, and close protection for 3 school-age children, each of whom attends different classes, plays different sports, and visits different friends. It requires a team large enough to cover every movement of every day without fail. Add it together. Duchy income exceeding £23 million per year. A personal fortune bolstered by inheritance from 2 of the 20th century's wealthiest women. A security operation funded by the state at a scale that no private citizen, no matter how rich, could replicate. The total cost of keeping William's family private is, by any reasonable estimate, in the tens of millions per year. The question is not whether this expenditure is justified. Security professionals will argue, persuasively, that the heir to the throne faces threats that demand this level of protection. The question is what it reveals about the nature of the life being protected. This is privacy as a financial enterprise, a project that requires the resources of a small nation to sustain, funded by a combination of medieval land rights, inherited wealth, and public taxation. William did not create this system. He was born into it, but he has used it with a precision and intentionality that none of his predecessors attempted. Every pound spent extending a boundary fence, planting screening trees, or installing counter-drone technology serves a single objective. The same objective that has driven every decision since August 1997. Keep them safe, keep them unseen, keep them alive. The question no one in the palace is willing to answer publicly is where the boundary lies between reasonable protection and something that begins to resemble a private kingdom, funded by the public, accountable to no one, and growing larger with each passing year. Chapter 6: When the drones changed everything. In 2015, the government quietly declared the airspace above a Norfolk country house a restricted zone, and the age of royal privacy changed forever. The announcement came without fanfare. A notice to airmen was issued by the Civil Aviation Authority, designating a small circle of airspace above Anmer Hall as a restricted area. The official justification cited security. The practical effect was to create an invisible dome over William's country home, through which no aircraft, drone, helicopter, or microlight could legally pass. Violation carried criminal penalties. In a single administrative action, the sky itself had been walled off. The timing was not coincidental. Between 2013 and 2015, consumer drone technology underwent a revolution. Devices that had been the preserve of military contractors and film studios were suddenly available to anyone with 800 pounds and an internet connection. The DJI Phantom, launched in 2013, could fly for 20 minutes, reach altitudes of several hundred feet, and carry a camera capable of capturing high-definition video. By 2015, its successors were smaller, quieter, and equipped with lenses that could read a car number plate from 300 feet above. By 2018, drones weighing less than 250 grams could be purchased for under 300 pounds, small enough to fit in a backpack and quiet enough to be inaudible from the ground at an altitude of 100 feet. For royal security planners, this was a nightmare scenario. Every fence, every hedgerow, every carefully planted screen of trees was suddenly irrelevant. A drone launched from a public road half a mile away could overfly the entire Anmer Hall estate in minutes, capturing footage of the garden, the patio, the children's play equipment, and the private spaces that years of perimeter work had been designed to protect. The technology that had rendered Catherine's Terrace in Provence vulnerable from half a mile at ground level now rendered everywhere vulnerable from the air. A single operator with a consumer device and a YouTube tutorial could achieve what a team of professional paparazzi with ladder platforms and telephoto lenses had spent weeks attempting. The no-fly zone was the first response, but it was a legal solution to a technological problem, and legal solutions require enforcement. A drone flying at 200 feet over a Norfolk field is invisible to the naked eye from the ground. It produces a faint buzzing sound that blends into the ambient noise of a rural landscape. Detecting one requires dedicated radar or acoustic monitoring equipment. Intercepting one requires either signal jamming, which is itself restricted under British telecommunications law, or the physical tracking and apprehension of the operator, who could be standing in a field a mile away with a controller that looks like a tablet computer. The security apparatus around royal residences began to adapt. Counter-drone systems, originally developed for military and airport applications, were quietly installed at key royal properties. The precise technology deployed remains classified, but industry sources suggest a combination of radio frequency detection, which identifies the electromagnetic signature of a drone's control signal, and optical tracking systems that use cameras and software to spot aerial objects against the sky. When a drone is detected, the response protocol involves identifying the operator's location from the control signal and dispatching police to intercept. But drones were only half of the new threat landscape. The simultaneous explosion of smartphone photography and social media platforms created a second, more insidious challenge. Every person within visual range of a royal family member was now carrying a high-resolution camera connected to a global distribution network. A nanny taking George to a playground, a tradesman arriving at a gate, a dog walker on a footpath 300 meters away. Any of them could capture an image and upload it to Instagram, Twitter, or a paparazzi tip line within seconds. The paparazzi of the 1990s had been a finite number of professionals with identifiable equipment. The paparazzi of the 2020s were everyone. This is the world William was navigating when, in January 2024, Catherine entered the London clinic for what the palace described as planned abdominal surgery. She was not seen publicly for weeks. Speculation exploded across social media, fueled by conspiracy theories, manipulated images, and a complete absence of authoritative information. When Catherine finally revealed in March 2024, in a video recorded on a bench in Windsor, that she had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy, the announcement landed with the force of a detonation. The months that followed were, by all accounts, the most difficult of William's adult life. His wife was ill, his children were frightened, and the world's attention was fixed on his family with an intensity that no security perimeter could deflect. The press, largely, was respectful. The editors of Britain's major newspapers, haunted perhaps by the ghost of 1997, chose restraint. But social media was not bound by those conventions. Conspiracy theories about Catherine's diagnosis, her treatment, and even her continued existence circulated with millions of views. Amateur sleuths on TikTok and Twitter dissected every pixel of every image. Drone operators, amateur photographers, and content creators attempted to capture images of the family during treatment and recovery. The boundary between professional media and amateur surveillance had dissolved completely. Everyone with a phone was now a potential threat. The vulnerability was total. Catherine's recovery, announced incrementally through 2024 and into 2025, brought relief but not relaxation. If anything, the experience crystallized something in William that had been forming for years. Privacy was not a preference, it was a medical necessity. His wife needed space to heal. His children needed protection from a world that would turn their mother's illness into content. And the house they were living in, a charming but modest cottage on the Windsor estate, could not provide it. The search for something larger, it's something more defensible, something that could be sealed against the age of drones and smartphones and viral speculation, was no longer theoretical. It was urgent, and the answer was already waiting, less than a mile away, behind a gate that was about to be locked for good. Chapter 7. The cottage that was never enough. William chose Adelaide Cottage precisely because it would cost the public nothing, and almost immediately it proved too small to contain his family's needs. The move to Adelaide Cottage in the summer of 2022 was supposed to be a statement. After years of headlines about the £4.5 million renovation of apartment 1A, after the awkward optics of royals living in a 20-room palace during a cost of living crisis, William and Catherine chose a home that said something deliberately different. 4 bedrooms, no staff quarters, no live-in help. A cottage in the traditional sense, albeit one located in the grounds of Windsor Castle and built for a king's mistress nearly 200 years ago. Adelaide Cottage was constructed in 1831 for Queen Adelaide, wife of William IV. It is a Grade II listed building with a cream-colored stucco exterior, a modest garden, and interiors that carry traces of its royal heritage in unexpected places. The ceiling of the main bedroom is decorated with gilt dolphins and rope motifs, salvaged from the Royal George, a royal yacht demolished in 1822. The creatures twist across the plaster in frozen gold, relics of a vessel that once carried monarchs across the channel. Their tails intertwine with nautical rope in a pattern that has been maintained through nearly 2 centuries of careful restoration. William's children fell asleep beneath them each night. There is something almost too perfect about that detail. A family descended from a millennium of maritime power, sleeping beneath dolphins rescued from a ship that no longer exists. The past in this family is never decorative. It is structural. It is in the ceiling above your head. The cottage also contains a marble Greco-Egyptian fireplace and a collection of Wyatteville woodwork that survives from the original construction. The rooms are bright, proportioned for comfort rather than grandeur, and arranged in a layout that encourages intimacy. There is no servants' hall, no formal dining room, no state reception area. This is a house designed for a woman who wanted to escape the formality of court life, and 2 centuries later, it served the same function for a family with the same desire. The cottage sat within the security perimeter of Windsor Castle, which meant no additional protection costs. This was the key selling point in the public narrative. At a time when the nation was struggling with rising energy bills and stagnant wages, the future king was downsizing. He was walking his children to a local school. He was driving himself to engagements. He was, in every visible respect, making an effort to live within something approaching normal means. But the constraints were real and multiplying. 4 bedrooms for a family of 5 meant no dedicated space for the children as they grew. George, Charlotte, and Louis shared arrangements that worked for young children, but would become impractical within a few years. There were no staff bedrooms, which meant that the protection officers, nannies, and household staff who are operationally essential to the heir's family had to be housed elsewhere on the Windsor estate and travel in daily. The cottage had no space for a home office large enough to conduct the business of the Duchy of Cornwall, no room for the secure communications equipment that the heir requires, and no capacity for the kind of private entertaining that is part of the role's diplomatic function. There was no room for Catherine's parents to stay overnight, a limitation that became particularly acute during her illness. The garden, while pleasant, was overlooked by the Long Walk, in one of the most famous and heavily visited avenues in the Crown Estate. This is a straight road stretching nearly 3 miles from the castle to a copper horse statue on Snow Hill, used daily by hundreds of tourists, joggers, cyclists, and horse riders. They passed within clear sightline of the cottage throughout the day. On weekends, the number could reach thousands. The security team's assessment was blunt. The property was manageable for a short-term arrangement. It was not sustainable as a permanent home for the Prince of Wales and his family. Catherine, according to those close to the family, found the cottage's limitations both charming and frustrating. She valued the domesticity, the enforced closeness, the mornings when all 5 of them were tripping over each other in a kitchen that could comfortably hold 3. But she also understood that the family was growing, that the demands on William were intensifying, and that the cottage was a pause, not a destination. The search for what came next began quietly in 2023. The criteria were specific. The property had to be within the Windsor Great Park estate, maintaining proximity to the children's school and to the castle, where William conducted much of his official business. It had to be large enough for the family, for live-in staff, and for the security infrastructure that the heir's household demands. It had to be private, genuinely private, in a way that Adelaide Cottage's position on the Long Walk could never achieve. And ideally, it had to belong to the Crown Estate already, avoiding the cost and complication of a new purchase. There was, as it happened, a property that met every criterion. A Georgian house deep within a forested section of the park, accessible by a single road, surrounded by 150 acres of enclosed land. A house that few members of the public had ever seen because the trees around it had been growing undisturbed for 250 years. Its name was Forest Lodge, and its transformation into the most heavily protected private residence in Britain was about to begin. Chapter 8: 150 Acres of Criminal Law. On a September morning in 2025, signs appeared overnight across Windsor Great Park, warning that walking on the grass was now a criminal offense. The signs were small, official in tone, and devastating in their implications. They invoked the Serious Organized Crime and Police Act of 2005, known as SOCPA, a law originally designed to prevent protests outside the Houses of Parliament. Under SOCPA, the Home Secretary has the power to designate any site as a protected area, making it a criminal offense to trespass within its boundaries. The designation transforms a civil matter, ordinary trespass, into a criminal one. A person who walks across a field that has been designated under SOCPA is not merely trespassing. They are committing a crime punishable by a fine or imprisonment. The area designated around Forest Lodge encompassed approximately 150 acres of Windsor Great Park. A perimeter stretching 2.3 miles was established around the property, enclosing woodland, grassland, pathways, and several structures that had previously been accessible to estate workers and local residents. On Cranbourne Gate, one of the park's historic entrances, was permanently closed to public access. 2 families living in cottages within the designated zone were relocated to alternative accommodation on the estate. A children's nature center that had operated within the perimeter was shut down. Dog walkers who had used the surrounding paths for decades were told their routine was over. The response was immediate and divided. Supporters of the decision pointed to the genuine security threats facing the heir's family. The attempted break-in at Windsor Castle in December 2021, when a crossbow-armed intruder scaled the perimeter wall and was intercepted just yards from the Queen's private apartments, demonstrated that the threat was not theoretical. Di Davies, a former head of royal protection at Scotland Yard, explained the logic in terms any security professional would recognize. Distance equals time. Time equals response capability. If an intruder breaches a perimeter 2.3 miles from the principal's residence, security teams have minutes to identify, assess, and intercept the threat. If the perimeter is 50 meters, they have seconds. The mathematics of protection is remorseless. More space means more safety. 150 acres is not excessive when you are protecting a future king, his wife who is recovering from cancer, and 3 children who represent the next 2 generations of the British constitutional order. Critics saw something different. They saw 150 acres of public parkland, managed by the Crown Estate and maintained with public funds, being enclosed for the private use of a single family. They noted that local residents who paid an annual key fee of £110 for access to certain areas of the park were now locked out without refund or consultation. They observed that the SOCPA designation, a tool of national security legislation originally drafted to address terrorism and serious organized crime, was being applied not to a military base or a government facility, but to a country house. They asked whether the same level of protection would be offered to any other family in Britain facing a security threat, no matter how severe. They knew the answer: it would not. The Crown Estate issued a statement confirming the changes and citing security requirements. It offered no further detail. The Metropolitan Police confirmed that the designation had been made under SOCPA, but declined to discuss the specific threat assessment that justified it. The Home Office referred inquiries to the police. The layers of institutional silence were themselves a kind of architecture. No single authority was willing to explain fully why 150 acres of English parkland had been placed behind a wall of criminal law. Inside the perimeter, work continued. Contractors were seen entering and leaving through the single remaining access point. Delivery vehicles arrived in the early morning hours. New fencing appeared along sections of the boundary. Mature trees were planted in gaps between existing woodland, thickening the visual screen around the property. The entire operation was conducted with the efficiency and discretion of a military engineering project. For the people who lived nearby, the change was tangible and immediate. Paths they had walked for years were blocked. Views they had enjoyed were screened. The rhythm of their interaction with the park, the morning walks, the weekend runs, the evening circuits with dogs, was simply deleted. One resident described it to a journalist with a precision that captured the strange quality of the situation. It is like someone drew a circle on a map, and everything inside it stopped belonging to us. It did not stop belonging to us, of course. It never belonged to us. We just thought it did. That distinction between what the public believes it owns and what the Crown actually controls lies at the heart of every debate about royal privacy. Windsor Great Park is not a public park in the way that Hyde Park or Regent's Park is. It is Crown estate land, managed on behalf of the sovereign, and public access to it has always been a privilege rather than a right. The SOCPA designation did not take away a legal entitlement. It revoked a long-standing permission. But for the people affected, the distinction felt academic. The gate was locked, the path was closed, and the reason was that a prince had moved in next door. Chapter 9. The House That Grief Designed. Forest Lodge was built in 1772 for a royal servant, and 250 years later, another man in royal service is reshaping it around a wound that has never healed. The house stands in a clearing surrounded by mature oak, beech, and chestnut trees. It is a red brick Georgian building of modest grandeur, 2 stories plus attic rooms with symmetrical wings extending from a central block. The facade is handsome without being ostentatious. 12 windows face the approach, their proportions perfectly balanced in the Georgian manner, and the front door is reached through a half-barrel vaulted entrance hall that opens into a central corridor running the depth of the house. This is a building that does not announce itself. It receives you. The interior, prior to the Wales family's renovations, contained a ballroom, several reception rooms, a substantial kitchen, and enough bedrooms to accommodate both the family and a small household staff. The grounds included a walled garden, a private tennis court, a pond fed by a natural spring, and several outbuildings used for estate purposes. The property had served various functions over its 250-year life. It had housed the deputy ranger of Windsor Great Park. It had been a wartime billet for officers stationed at nearby facilities. It had been, for long stretches, simply a large house in a forest, maintained, but not much loved. The kind of place that accumulates character through neglect rather than intention, where the plasterwork cracks in interesting patterns and the floorboards remember every footstep. Catherine's involvement in the renovation was by all accounts extensive and deeply personal. Friends have described her mood boards and floor plans as the work of a woman building not just a house, but a world. She consulted extensively with interior designers, but made the final decisions herself, a drawing on an aesthetic that blends English country house tradition with contemporary warmth. The kitchen, as in every home she and William have made, was designed as the heart of the building. Large enough for a family of 5 to cook, eat, and spend evenings together. An aga was installed, the totemic centerpiece of the English country kitchen, alongside modern appliances that Catherine uses regularly. She is, by the testimony of those who know her well, a genuinely enthusiastic cook. The kitchen at Forest Lodge was designed around the way she actually lives, not around the way a princess is expected to. The children's rooms were planned with a view toward the decade ahead, sized and configured to accommodate teenagers rather than just the young children they still were. A self-contained flat was included for Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, whose close relationship with their grandchildren has been a defining feature of the Wales family's domestic life. The security infrastructure, less visible but no less carefully planned, was integrated into every element of the design. Windows were fitted with blast-resistant glazing. Perimeter sensors were installed beneath the surface of the lawn and along the tree line. A dedicated communications room was built to house the encrypted systems that the heir requires for contact with government and military authorities. The single-access road was equipped with vehicle barriers and monitored by cameras capable of reading number plates at a distance. The entire property was connected to a central monitoring station, staffed around the clock, linked to both the Metropolitan Police and the Thames Valley Force. There is a room in Forest Lodge, its location undisclosed, that serves as a secure refuge. In security terminology, this is a safe room or citadel, a space designed to withstand forced entry for a specified period, equipped with independent communications and life support, to which the family can retreat in the event of a direct attack on the property. Every senior royal residence has one. Its existence is unremarkable in the context of protective security. But there is something about knowing it exists, a room built for the worst moment imaginable, hidden inside a house that is itself hidden inside a forest, that captures the essential reality of William's life. He is a man who has built his home around the possibility that the worst moment might come again. The family moved in during October half-term, 2025. The transition was managed with characteristic discretion. No moving vans were photographed on public roads. No neighbors posted updates on social media. No estate agent's listing appeared and disappeared from the internet. One day, the cottage on the Long Walk was the Wales family's home. The next, it was empty, and the family had vanished behind the trees. The children, according to friends of the family, were thrilled. After 3 years in a cottage where they could hear tourists on the Long Walk from their bedrooms, they had a garden large enough to run in, a tennis court, a pond, and the kind of space that childhood is supposed to contain. Catherine's health, by the autumn of 2025, had improved significantly. Her public appearances, carefully managed and limited in number, showed a woman returning to strength. The house, for her, represented something beyond security. It was the place where recovery could continue in private, where the children could run across a lawn without wondering whether someone was watching from a hedge, where the gilt dolphins of Adelaide Cottage gave way to Georgian brick and the smell of old trees through open windows. For William, Forest Lodge was something else. It was the answer he had been building toward for nearly 30 years. Not a perfect answer, not a permanent one, but the closest he had come to a structure that could hold the weight of what he carried. Grief does not diminish over decades. It changes shape. It becomes infrastructure. It becomes planning applications, security assessments, and the careful placement of trees. And in October 2025, it became a house in a forest, where a man who lost his mother to cameras brought his own children to live in the dark shade of oaks that had been growing since before his family took the throne. Chapter 10. The Queen Who Vanished and the Warning She Left. In 1861, Queen Victoria withdrew from public life after her husband's death, and the British public nearly abolished the monarchy in response. Albert, the prince consort, died of typhoid fever on the 14th of December, 1861. Victoria was 42. They had been married for 21 years. They had 9 children. And the depth of her grief was so total that it rewrote the terms of her relationship with the nation for the next 4 decades. She withdrew, not partially, not temporarily. She stopped appearing at the state opening of Parliament. She abandoned her public calendar. She retreated to Osborne House on the Isle of Wight and to Balmoral in the Scottish Highlands, 2 residences chosen specifically because they were far from London and its crowds. She wore black for the rest of her life. She kept Albert's rooms exactly as he had left them. She ordered his clothes laid out each morning, his shaving water brought to his dressing table. The grief was genuine. It was also, in political terms, catastrophic. By the 1870s, Republican sentiment in Britain had reached its highest point since the Civil War. Pamphlets circulated asking what the Queen actually did for the £60,000 a year she received from Parliament. A member of Parliament named Charles Dilke openly campaigned for abolition of the monarchy. Public rallies drew thousands. The press, which had once fawned over Victoria, turned hostile. Editorials asked whether a queen who refused to be seen was a queen at all. The relationship between sovereign and people, which depends fundamentally on visibility and engagement, was fracturing under the weight of one woman's refusal to be seen. Victoria eventually returned to public life, pressured by her ministers and by the simple electoral mathematics of a restless population. Her gradual re-emergence, beginning in the late 1870s and accelerating through her Golden Jubilee in 1887, restored the monarchy's standing. But the warning her withdrawal, inscribed into the constitutional record, has echoed through every subsequent reign. The monarchy survives by being present. Withdraw too far, and the public begins to wonder why it is paying for something it cannot see. Edward VII understood this and became the most socially visible monarch in a century. George V understood it and invented the Christmas broadcast. Elizabeth II understood it and spent 70 years being seen at every opportunity, in every corner of the realm. William knows this history. He has studied it, formally and informally, as part of the preparation for kingship that has been ongoing since his childhood. And the tension it creates with his instinct for concealment is the central paradox of his life. He wants to be invisible. His role requires him to be seen. He wants his children to grow up unobserved. His family's survival depends on the public feeling connected to those children. He wants Forest Lodge to be a fortress. The monarchy needs it to be, at least occasionally, a stage. The solution he and his advisors have developed is a theory of graduated access. It draws, whether consciously or not, on the Tudor model of the Privy Chamber, where proximity to the monarch was rationed in concentric circles. The outermost circle sees the prince at public engagements. The next circle sees him at official receptions and dinners. The innermost circle, vanishingly small, sees him at home. Official engagements, planned and controlled, provide the public with evidence that the Prince of Wales is working, present, and engaged. The annual calendar of events, the hospital visits, the school openings, the state dinners, all serve the constitutional function of visibility. But between those events, the family retreats behind the perimeter. The gap between public appearances is the moat. In the appearances themselves are the drawbridge, lowered at intervals just often enough to prevent the question Victoria provoked. Where have they gone, and why should we care? Whether this balance can hold across a reign that may last 50 years is the question William cannot yet answer. The pressures will only intensify. A coronation brings expectations of accessibility. A king who retreats to a forest after his crowning will face questions that a prince can defer. But the next chapter of his strategy is already in motion, and it involves not hiding from cameras, but controlling exactly what they see. Chapter 11: The photographs they will never take. Every image the Wales family releases is engineered to make the photograph no one is supposed to take worth nothing at all. This is the economics of controlled visibility, and it is as calculated as any hedge fund strategy. The value of an unauthorized photograph of a royal is determined by scarcity. If the public has not seen Prince George in 6 months, a candid shot of him walking to school is worth tens of thousands of pounds to an agency. If the palace released a portrait of George last week, that same candid shot is worth almost nothing. The market is flooded. Demand has been met. The paparazzi's financial incentive to pursue the family is, for a brief window, eliminated. Catherine understood this mechanism instinctively, and she turned it into an art. Beginning with the birth of George, she established a practice of taking and releasing her own photographs of the children at key moments. Birthdays, first days of school, Christmas. The images were warm, natural in appearance, and technically accomplished. Catherine is a skilled photographer who studied history of art at St. Andrews and has a genuine eye for composition and light. Her images of the children have a quality of intimate family snapshots while also being precisely calibrated for public consumption. They are shot in soft natural light, usually outdoors, with the children dressed in clothes that are aspirational but not ostentatious. They are, in every respect, the photographs a loving mother would take. They are also, in every respect, strategic. The genius of this approach is its double function. On the surface, it is a mother sharing pictures of her children, relatable, charming, endearing. It connects the family to the millions of parents who post similar images of their own children on social media every day. Underneath, it is an economic weapon. Each official release is a controlled detonation designed to collapse the market for unofficial images. The timing is deliberate. A portrait released on the eve of a school term means that any photographer staking out the school gates on the first morning will find that their pictures have been financially neutralized in advance. A birthday photograph released at midnight means that by the time the newspapers go to press, every front page already has the image it needs. The annual Christmas card follows the same logic. A single posed photograph, chosen and released by the family, provides every newspaper and magazine with a free, high-quality image that satisfies their audience's desire to see the family. It costs the paparazzi their Christmas bonus. The staged photograph is not a gift to the public. It is a substitute for the unstaged photograph that the public might otherwise pay someone to obtain. This strategy has limitations. It depends on the public accepting the official images as sufficient. It relies on the mainstream media honoring the implicit bargain, and it cannot control social media, where the appetite for unauthorized content is insatiable. But as a first line of defense, it has been remarkably effective. The Wales children are among the least photographed royal children in modern history, not because cameras cannot find them, but because their mother has made the economics of finding them unworkable. There was one notable disruption to this system. In March 2024, Catherine released an image that was quickly identified as having been digitally altered. The Associated Press issued a kill order on the photograph, an almost unprecedented action for an image from a royal household. The incident was minor in substance, likely the result of minor retouching rather than deliberate fabrication, but it briefly damaged the credibility that the entire strategy depends upon. If the official images cannot be trusted, the market for unofficial images reopens. Catherine addressed the matter with a brief personal statement, and the system recalibrated. The photographs released subsequently were unedited and accompanied by a degree of informality that suggested a lesson had been learned. The managed image, like any weapon, depends on the trust of those it is designed to protect. But the most powerful image in the Wales family's arsenal is the one that has never been taken. No authorized photograph of the interior of Forest Lodge exists in the public domain. No image of the garden, no picture of the children's rooms or the kitchen or the view from any window. The house is a visual void, and in the age of total visibility, that void is itself a statement. It says, "This space is ours. You are not invited, and no photograph, however valuable, will ever bring you inside." Chapter 12. Fortresses built from a father's memory. When Prince George is old enough to understand, he will learn that every tree planted around his childhood home was placed there because of a night in Paris before he was born. There is a version of this story that is simply about real estate. A wealthy man with security concerns acquires a series of large properties and upgrades their defenses. The properties increase in size and remoteness over time, reflecting both the growing family within and the escalating threats without. The cost is borne partly by the public and partly by inherited wealth. The end result is a comfortable, secure, and extremely private life. That is the version of the story that fits on a planning application. It is the version that Palace Communications would prefer you to accept. But it is not the true story. The true story is about a boy who was woken in the night and told that the people with cameras had killed his mother, and who spent every year after that building places where the cameras could not reach. The true story is about the distance between Apartment 1A at Kensington Palace, with its 800 feet of hedge, and Forest Lodge, with its 150 acres of criminal law. That distance is not measured in miles. It is measured in fear. In the accumulation of threats and violations and near misses that convinced a man year by year that the world would never voluntarily leave his family alone. William's lease on Forest Lodge extends into the late 2040s, a span that encompasses the entirety of his children's remaining childhoods, and, quite possibly, the early years of his reign. He has told people close to him that he intends to live there even as king, commuting to London for engagements and returning each evening to the trees. If this happens, he will be the first British monarch in centuries to make his primary home not in a palace, but in a country house hidden from view. The symbolism would be extraordinary. The King of England, invisible by choice, governing from behind a wall of oaks. A man on the throne who has arranged his entire life around the principle of not being seen. George, Charlotte, and Louis are growing up inside this architecture of protection. They attend a local school. They have friends. They ride bicycles. They play sports. By all accounts, they have something that their father never had and that their grandmother was killed for wanting: a childhood. But the boundaries of their world are defined by a perimeter that exists because of a tragedy they did not experience and may not yet fully understand. They are, in a sense, living inside the aftershock. The earthquake happened on a night in August 1997. The reverberations shaped every wall around them. This is what grief looks like when it has unlimited resources. It does not manifest as depression or paralysis, though William may have experienced both in the decades since that night at Balmoral. It becomes action. It becomes planning. It becomes the meticulous rerouting of driveways and the legal designation of exclusion zones and the planting of trees whose canopies will not reach full density for another 20 years. Grief, given enough money and enough power, becomes landscape architecture. It becomes the transformation of 150 acres of English parkland into a monument to a mother who was never allowed to close a door behind her. Catherine's contribution is the warmth inside the fortress, the kitchen where the children do homework, the garden where they play football, the flat where her parents stay, the paint colors she chose, the furniture she arranged. She has taken the perimeter William built and filled it with a domestic life that is, by every account, genuinely loving and deliberately ordinary. Pasta for dinner, bedtime stories, arguments about screen time, Saturday mornings in pajamas. The contrast between the world inside the fence and the apparatus that maintains the fence is the central fact of their family's existence. William builds the walls. Catherine makes the rooms worth living in. There is a philosophical question embedded in all of this that neither William nor anyone close to him has publicly addressed. If the purpose of the monarchy is to embody the nation, to be seen and known and connected to the people it represents, then what does it mean when the heir builds his life around the principle of being unseen? Is Forest Lodge a home, or is it a withdrawal? Is it the act of a loving father protecting his children? Or is it the first step toward the kind of royal invisibility that nearly destroyed the crown in Victoria's time? Is this courage, or is this fear wearing the mask of courage? The answer may be that it is both. That William has found, in the geography of Windsor Great Park, a way to be simultaneously present and absent. A prince who appears at hospitals and schools and state banquets and then vanishes into a forest. A father whose children are photographed once a year and are otherwise unknown to the nation they will one day serve. A man who has answered the question posed on the worst night of his life, not with a single gesture, but with a series of buildings, each one an attempt to make the world safe for the people he loves. Each one larger than the last, each one further from the road. Are these mansions hidden from the world? Or is this the world a grieving son has built to replace the one that failed him? The trees around Forest Lodge are still growing. The canopy is not yet closed. And the answer, like everything in this family's story, remains behind a gate that only opens from the inside.